Hello and welcome. This is From Day One, and this is our webinar, Reinventing Traditional Internships for a Virtual World. Please join me in welcoming Steve Kepp. He's a co-founder and the Chief Content Officer of From Day One. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks. Welcome everyone to our webinar, in which we'll be exploring a pressing topic, Reinventing Traditional Internships for a Virtual World. At a time when so many businesses have their employees working remotely, what happens to internship programs? Many companies have transitioned in-person internships to virtual experiences so that they can continue building a highly skilled and diverse talent pipeline. We'll explore today how employers are reinventing these internship programs to go remote and tips for ensuring that it remains a quality and interactive program for both the employer and the interns. Before we dive into this topic, we'd like to thank our partners NAF and PCAP for making today's webinar possible. I'll tell you a little bit about each one. NAF is a traditional network of business, education, and community leaders who work together to ensure that high school students are college, career, and future ready. During this unprecedented time, it's even more critical to ensure that our future leaders develop the skills they'll need to thrive in this remote workplace environment. And this webinar will provide important insights into how employers are adapting and creating meaningful experiences. PCAP, employers are beginning to recognize they need a new way to cultivate expert cyber talent. Using the Purdue Cyber Apprenticeship program, PCAP for short, as a foothold, you can take the next giant leap toward bridging the workforce gap for a much broader and more diverse population of Americans. Now, a few logistical items. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand within 24 hours after the event using your registration email. You can watch for a written account of the conversation next week on our website at fromdayone.co. At around 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we will have a Q&A session. You can submit your questions anytime during this webinar using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator, Seth Green. He is the founding director of the Baumhart Center for Social Enterprise and Responsibility at Loyola University of Chicago. So, okay, Seth, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Steve. And thank you all for joining us. As Steve said, this is an incredibly important topic. The future leaders of our country are truly the folks who are right now in internships, and your ability to move virtually will both help your business, but also it will be a big part of building our future talent pipeline. We have with us 5 extraordinary people to discuss this topic. Brooke Rice, who, as you saw in the opening slide, is the Senior Director of Work-Based Learning at NAF. We have Myrtle Bunes, who's the Vice President of Talent Acquisition at Fox Core. We have Scott Moore, a Senior Manager in Early Talent Recruiting at Zillow. We have Tom Kleber, a Senior Manager at University Relations at Biogen, and Amanda Beaver, who's the Associate Director of Community Impact at KPMG. Before we jump into questions with them, I just want to go around and have each of them talk a bit about what internships look like at their companies, how they have converted, and how it's going so far to kind of set the table of the different types of internships that they are all offering at their companies. And as they do that, I'll ask them to briefly introduce themselves as well. So Brooke, can we start with you with that opening question?
Sure. So I'll start with the introduction first and then go into the question. Sorry to throw you off your game, Seth. Like the introduction said, my name is Brooke Rice, and I'm the Senior Director of Work-Based Learning at NAF, which is an education and workforce development nonprofit. We're located in New York, but we have remote employees all over the place, and so I'm coming to you from my home office in North Carolina. Our organization serves about 100,000 students, high school students, in career academies across the country. And our focus is really on ensuring that all students have equal access and opportunity to kind of create successful futures for themselves. And so we work with our business partners, KPMG being one of those who's on the panel today, to kind of hone internships in particular. And so at NAF, I'm part of the kind of the workforce experience program implementers. And so we're excited to kind of dig in today. In terms of our internships, we typically in this space really work with our corporate partners to develop those internship programs. Most of those are in person. This year, they are going to be face-to-face. Within our own organization, though, we also have interns. Some things that we've done a little bit differently this year is instead of it just being a summer internship experience, we've done a summer and a fall. We realize a lot of our students kind of have that virtual burnout right now after having been in that space. And so we're really thinking through being intentional about the goals for our program and making sure that those experiences are as impactful in a virtual environment as they are in the in-person type of environment.
Thank you, Brooke. Mershali Bunes, can we ask you to tell us how this looks at FoxCorp and to introduce yourself?
Sure. Similar to Brooke, I will start with me first, and then we'll dive into how it looks at FoxCorp now. But my name is Mershali Bunes. I lead recruiting at Fox Corporation, and that encompasses our Fox Sports, our Fox Entertainment, our Fox News, and our Fox TV stations brands. So we typically host a fall, spring, and summer intern cycle. And for that year, we typically see north of about 550 students. Our summer clearly is our largest cycle, where we host about 226 students or so across all our brands. So obviously this year, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we quickly had to kind of pivot and redesign our program. So this year, I'm very excited to announce that we will be moving forward with a virtual program. We have condensed the program a bit. Typically, our program is about 10 weeks. We have condensed the program a bit just to adapt to the nuances that a virtual environment provides. So with that being said, our program this year for our summer will run about 4 weeks. And we've kind of changed the program a bit in terms of how it's structured. So typically that intern would report into their specific business unit. So for example, if they're hired onto Fox Sports, they would report into an individual at Fox Sports and really kind of be ingrained within that business. But this year, what we've decided to do is create visibility amongst all the Fox brands. So this year, our interns will be reporting into our campus recruitment team. And we've designed a series of master classes where they really get to kind of understand the breadth and depth of what Fox Corporation is. So we're really excited about that. And then we are, believe it or not, starting to prepare for our full fall virtual class, which is expected to start early September. So really excited about that. And then with our fall virtual class, we're hopeful that we can host it with the typical 140 students that we typically have.
Well, thank you, Mershali, and thank you as well for all of us who are virtual now for the entertainment that you're offering as a company amidst this moment. Scott,
of course.
Tell us about things at Zillow in this moment.
Absolutely. So my name is Scott. I've been working in early talent for over a decade. Relatively new to Zillow, only been here for about 3 months. Previously, I led the early talent team at Gap clothing company. Prior to that, I was at KPMG, which has already been brought up before. So I've got experience in a few different industries. But with Zillow, we did shift to a 100% virtual environment for our internships this year. And we did do a slight reduction of the timeline as well. So our internships were traditionally 12 weeks long. We only scaled it back 1 week. So it's 11 weeks. So we're still holding it pretty consistent, but we just needed a little bit more time on the front end to make all of our adjustments to a virtual format. But as far as we've been really successful in making those adjustments, so there's actually not going to be any change for us in the work that the interns are performing. They're still going to do it virtually, and we're able to utilize a lot of the online tools that we have to be able to create the work environment in their workspace at home as much as we can. So it's really great that we're still able to provide a very, very similar experience from a content perspective. I think the biggest shift for us is going to be the events that we would typically hold for interns. We're not going to quite be able to do like go to a baseball game, or I think the other one that's a little bit even sadder is that we always do some type of community service activities throughout the summer. Those are really hard to recreate in a virtual environment. So anybody that has any ideas, I'm still looking for some. But you know, we're hopeful that we can still have a really good experience for the interns this summer.
Thank you, Scott. Tom, you literally are the manager of university relations. I'm sure internships are quite core to a lot of what you're doing. Tell us about yourself and your kind of world at Biogen as it regards to internships.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. As Seth mentioned, my name is Tom Kleber, and I lead university relations for Biogen. For those of you unfamiliar with us, we're a biotech company focused on developing treatments for neurological and neurodegenerative diseases. I joined Biogen just about 3 months ago. I was in the office on a Monday, went through orientation, unpacked my desk by Wednesday. On Thursday, we started working from home and haven't been back in the office since. So it was definitely an interesting experience. We have also gone entirely virtual, although taken somewhat of a hybrid approach given the business that we operate in. As I'm sure you can imagine, some of our interns, especially in research and development, would need to be in the lab in order to complete their work. And so we look to pivot people to other projects, research projects where we can. We delayed some internships to later in the summer, some co-ops all the way to September or January in some cases, and then unfortunately canceled a handful, but the vast majority of interns were able to go virtual. This was kind of an interesting year, right? Because right as we were wrapping up recruiting, that's when things started to come together, when we realized, you know, the traditional internship experience probably wasn't going to happen. So it was one where it really was, as everybody mentioned, more of a pivot than it was like a strategic plan and kind of, you know, figuring it out as you went along the way. But we've been able to develop a lot of great programming. Hosting things like our weekly lunch and learns from various leaders from across the organization, buying lunch gift cards for all of our interns so that they can still buy lunch because we can't cater for them, right? Doing some, for our fun events, like leveraging Steam for some collaborative video games they can do in intern groups together. Getting them, all the swag, working with a vendor to get them some nice stuff. So had to get pretty creative, but response has been great so far. Our interns started last week and they're loving it, and response from the business has been really good too.
Very cool. So they don't have to come to work, but they still get the lunch, they get the games. How many other opportunities do you have in internships this summer, Tom?
Yeah, exactly, right? Sorry, we closed it down, but we'll take your application for 2021.
Okay. While I go work on that, Amanda, can you share who you are and your program at KPMG?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Amanda Beaver, and I'm an associate director on KPMG's National Community Impact Team. So I'm speaking mostly from the corporate social responsibility lens, although I do have enough information from my campus recruiting colleagues probably to be dangerous. KPMG's community impact team is really focused on a commitment to lifelong learning, a vision where there is equitable access to meaningful learning opportunities. So we collaborate with nonprofits like NAF to nurture talent at an earlier stage of life, to providing access to transformational learning opportunities so that there are returns in the community and ultimately to the profession as well. So it's a little bit about an earlier intervention. So from the college lens, we have what we call a winter internship, like in our accounting busy season, as well as a summer internship. Our winter internships were really able to wrap up just on a remote work basis when COVID hit the US. So this summer, we would have 2,300 college and MBA interns, and we will still have 2,300 college and MBA interns. The difference is it would have been a 10-week program where they were getting true field experience side by side with our professionals, assigned to client engagements, and really treated like a first-year associate. Now those 23 interns are getting an 80-hour experience where they're getting 20 hours of client engagement activities, and 60 hours is really focused on training and development. But my wheelhouse really is the work that we do together with NAF. And there are a few ways that we typically support NAF. So one is work-based learning opportunities, where we go into NAF academies, into high schools, presenting on softer technical skills and or bring NAF students into KPMG offices. The next is sort of a traditional internship model, like a one-to-one model where we might have one NAF intern in our Kansas City office, for example, or 8 NAF interns in another larger city office. And the third concept is called this Future Ready Lab, and that's that lab style group-based internship. So working backwards then, the Future Ready Lab is really what we are looking to make successful at first in the virtual environment. And so we were hoping to reach 100 young people in 4 cities in the US this summer with paid internships. And what is actually happening is that we'll reach just under 90 in 3 cities. New York in particular is unable to support with the level of crisis that's going on there and make that work. So we're really close to actually the scale that we had hoped. And the design is very similar on a virtual basis. So we'll talk more about the differences. So what we aren't able to do are those one-to-one internships in our offices. Our offices aren't open yet. But what we're hoping to help close that gap and those lost opportunities is that what we learn this summer from the virtual Future Ready Labs, we'll actually take that and apply it to something we haven't done before, which is school year internships with NAF students from high school. And so that could be a hybrid virtual and in-person experience to work around the school year calendar. So what's lost, we hope will be gained on a lag.
Well, so Amanda, maybe we can come back to you and Brooke first on this next question, because one of the things that I want to explore a little further before we jump into design and some of the other elements of your programs is why you should have an internship program in the first place. Why is this important to your company's social responsibility, as you talked about, Amanda? Brooke, why is this important to, the development of especially high school and college students? So maybe we can start with the two of you and then we'll open that up to the rest of the panel. Why do internships matter? How do they fit into a company's social responsibility platform and strategy?
Sure.
Go for it, Amanda, and then we'll come to Brooke.
Okay. I talked about how our team's really focused on transformative learning experiences and how do we define that? And an internship is that, right? So I think we can all acknowledge it's a way to learn about yourself, your interests, your strengths, and your gaps from the soft and technical skill perspective. It's certainly a new way to develop new kinds of relationships and really lean into mentorship. But above all else in our work with NAF, it's really a way to learn a new way of thinking. Our Future Ready Labs are really focused on innovation and design thinking. And so do we expect a high school intern in a Future Ready Lab powered by KPMG walks away with technical accounting skills? Of course not. But we think they walk away knowing how to look at a problem from many angles and focus on asking as many questions as possible instead of seeking the right answer. So it's doing that earlier in your life and your career.
And Brooke, I mean, you oversee this across so many companies. And so, what does that lens offer in terms of the value of these internships?
Yeah, so I mean, with NAF, we've been around for about 40 years. We have 40 years of alumni that have gone through our programs in the high school space. And the things that we continuously hear from them are, not only the skill development lens, the soft skills, the critical thinking, those things that Amanda mentioned, but also the networking is incredibly important, even at the high school lens. A lot of the students that we serve don't have the parent connections to get them those opportunities. And so we kind of act as that intermediary to leverage our partner relationships to get them that type of experience. But the major theme I think we hear, whether that's high school interns or even college interns, is the confidence that the internship provides for them. So not only the resume builder that they're getting, but also the networking, and then just the ability to be like, I really can do this, whatever it is that you're interning in. So that's what we hear a lot from the interns. And I think especially as we've seen, Seth, you mentioned, or maybe it was Steve that mentioned, half of the internships kind of went away, even at the college level. And I think it's really important for businesses to also acknowledge how important internships are to them. Everything from the perspective that interns bring, their fresh eyes, and, they don't know the box, so they can't think inside of it yet. And so, kind of giving that aspect, as well as, what we've heard from our other corporate partners too, is their staff development that comes as a result of working with interns, management opportunities for the first time that some of the younger staff are able to kind of accomplish. So I think that has been a really central theme of kind of, why the internships are really important. but also from the perspective of, you know, why at this time they're really important is that this is a new reality for all of us. Like, we're all learning this together. And so the interns really bring in that kind of new energy, new vibe, new things to think about as we are learning our way through this. And it's not coming from the place of, man, I used to work in an office and now I'm having to work from home. You know, their perspective is very different. And so while, you know, some of the support systems and technology and things like that are things that we need to be thinking about with internships, this is a really great opportunity to dive in for both the students and for the businesses.
So I want to open this up now to Scott, Michelle, and Tom. I mean, we've heard the kind of win-win case that this is part of both a company's core strategy to be transformational and help serve, but it's also, as Brooke was saying, part of the true development of teams, of leadership, of pipeline. And so there's a really strong business case too. You know, for any of you who want to jump in on this, where do you see that business case show up in your respective worlds?
Yeah, so I'm happy to kick that off. For us, the internship program at Fox is incredibly important because it definitely serves as our pipeline for full-time staff roles. So actually, my campus team, who clearly owns campus across the West and East Coast region, they also own entry-level hiring across the enterprise as well. So it is very important for us that as we build these relationships and foster these relationships with the interns that we're bringing into our company, that we're able to immediately throw them into our pipeline for full-time roles. We tend to have a lot of you know, production assistant roles, which typically tend to be about 0 to 1 year of experience within the firm. And we're able to convert really quickly all the interns who are with us. And as a matter of fact, there are interns who sometimes aren't eligible to start full-time jobs because they are still in school, but we have come up with creative ways where we start them as freelancers and they work with us for 2 days a week. So we've tried to make sure that our internship program really serves for us as our pipeline into full-time roles. And then, you know, additionally to that, our internship program for us is also another kind of channel for diversity. So we also use that particular intern pipeline for a diversity pipeline to kind of affect change at that ground level. And then hopefully these interns stay with us for quite a few while and actually grow within the company. So for us, look, we don't have to make the business case for why internships are incredibly important. Quite frankly, you know, there was some discussion with my boss, our CHRO, around, hey, perhaps we should maybe hold off on doing a summer internship or cancel it. And then he clearly challenged me because it's so important to the company. And he's like, you need to figure out a way to make the internship continue to happen this season. So it's incredibly important to Fox Corporation because we most certainly see it as, you know, clearly a pipeline and fostering relationships and giving people opportunities, but it's also from the diversity angle for us as well. It's played very well.
Thank you, Michelle. Tom and Scott, anything to add?
I'll just add one quick piece. I completely echo everything that Brooke and Amanda has said, and to just kind of build on one of the points that Michelle had just said. People have an inherent interest to go and give back to the school that they went to, the program that they were involved in, whether it be NAF or something similar, and to be able to harness that excitement internally is awesome. So, you know, I can't tell you how many of our managers that are managing interns right now were eager to have them start. So it actually creates a higher level of engagement with your staff from some of those training opportunities that they had mentioned, but the excitement and the buzz during the summer of the interns just creates a great environment overall within the company. And it fuels that energy that they have to give back to the university that they may have graduated from, or even if it isn't a school that they graduated from, just to be able to give back is kind of a reverse mentor role. They remember being an intern themselves. They remember kind of the guidance that they got, and they have that inherent passion. The other thing is with interns, typically they're going to be juniors in most cases, sometimes sophomores, right? They go back to school for a whole nother year. and they can become great campus ambassadors for you and your brand. So I lead the early talent team. So it's not just internships, but we also manage our full-time hires coming out of the university environment, or even some, alternative pathways. But having those former interns go back to their university and be able to help find that next group of students that you want to bring in full time, their excitement and the support that you get from them as well is really advantageous to your overall recruiting efforts.
Tom, last word on this question.
Yeah.
What else can you add to why this is a very positive program?
Yeah, I think we've hit it here, right? There's not a whole lot more to add. I think the only other point I might mention is that we will at times use our internship program as an opportunity for high potential future leaders or managers at Biogen to get some experience with managing somebody before they take on a leadership role in a more formal manner, right? This year especially, is a great opportunity where there's some interesting challenges related to managing interns in a virtual environment. And in order for that to be, effective, your manager has to be on top of it, checking in and ensuring that your intern has everything they need to be successful and following up. And so it's a great way for us, not only to build future pipelines, create good brand, give back to the academic community, but it's also a way for us to develop new leaders at Biogen as well.
Well, so you've made the case, and now the question is for the folks out there, how do they structure all of this to be successful? And so we're going to dive into a few elements, and I just want to say out loud that we are going to get to your questions. So start developing them and start sending them into the Q&A box so that we can begin to share those with the panel as well. But let's start at the level of management. And I want, Michelle, maybe we can start with you to ask about two sides of this equation, right? How do you prepare your staff to manage virtual interns? Because many of them may not even have full supervisory roles, and now they're both taking on management and a new context. And then I want to hear from you, how do you set accountability for the intern in this virtual world? And so we'll hear that hopefully across the panel, but Michelle, we'll start with you. And how you do that at Fox.
Sure. So, like I previously mentioned, we really had to kind of reimagine the program and how it would look. So essentially, one of the first things that we decided to do was move the day-to-day intern management away from the business manager and bring it to the campus managers, and have the campus managers manage those interns. One of the key reasons for that is because as we were all shoved into the pool of working from home, whether we wanted to or not, I think what we found on the employee level was there were some managers, quite frankly, quite transparently, that were having a hard time managing their own staff remotely. And so what we did not want to do was hinder the internship experience for that intern by having them report into a business manager that potentially wouldn't have full onus or the time to really kind of give that intern a full robust experience. So that decision was made pretty quickly when we decided we would continue on with the virtual program. So all our interns are now managing into our reporting into our campus managers. With that being said, we have created somewhat of a liaison where the business managers know these interns exist and can have them work on various projects throughout the course of the internship. One of the ways that we're holding these interns accountable is that we're giving them a 4-week project. And the 4-week project is going to be based on what their initial interest was when they applied to our program. So when we selected our interns, our campus managers sent out a survey of sorts to these interns that were selected for the program to ask, hey, what are your top 3 areas of interest? Is it production? Is it sports? Is it finance? And so we took all that data, and what we ended up doing was collecting that data and then creating projects and working with various business managers around what are some projects that these interns can work on for the course of the 4-week time period that they're with us. And quite frankly, ad sales has a great project for the interns who will be taking on ad sales. Is essentially how do we create, an upfront, and I'm not sure if everyone knows what an upfront is, but, it's essentially the is the best time in ad sales where you get to like really brag about the shows that's coming up on your platform. How do we create that upfront experience in a now virtual environment? And that's one project that they're going to be working on. And then at the end of the 4-week internship experience, they'll have to present that project. So that's one way of holding them accountable, right? Because at the 4-week termination of the project, the internship, they'll have to present on that. Additionally, what we wanted to do was make sure that we were creating opportunities for them to continue learning on the day-to-day. Because look, I don't know if any of you feel this, but being home, working, not, being able to communicate with your employees in the normal way can feel somewhat isolating. So what we've kind of implemented in our program this season is essentially we're having the interns do what we're calling digital journals. And so essentially it's like, 1 or 2 paragraphs around what did you do today? Who did you reach out today? What did you learn today? What kind of exciting thing came out of your project today? And then additionally, what we're also going to do is host weekly Zoom happy hours, for lack of a better word, so that everyone can get together. And then what we've also established in our redesign are master classes. So essentially with our master classes is we'll have a business unit manager come in and speak to various elements of the business. So some things off the top of my head is, we're having clearly some of our ad sales individuals speak about, the ad sales business, and we're having some of our sports personalities come in to speak about, the art of debating a sports topic. So trying to make it interactive and fun for the interns, but also having that balance of making sure that they feel that it is a rich and robust experience for them. So those are some of the things that we've kind of implemented to keep our interns accountable, and then make sure that our business managers do have some stake in the game as well.
Wow, those are a lot of really interesting and, truly compelling strategies. I'll say that I went to do my internship in the old-fashioned in-person days, and I'm now regretting it. Those are, truly, I don't remember happy hours that have virtual happy hours and then the master classes. So I'll open it up to others. I hope you're not too intimidated by that. Tom's up there. I've got the lunch. I've got this. Let's see what you've got, Tom, this time to compete with these strategies.
No, absolutely. Manager buy-in was so critical to ensuring that our interns have a good experience this summer, right? And so when we made the decision to go virtually, that decision wasn't made in a bubble. Back in March, when this is starting to surface concerns about what does our internship program look like for this summer, we polled all of our hiring managers individually to say, if necessary, can this internship go virtual? If not, why can't it? That response back, the majority of people said it could go virtual. And then as it became more and more clear that we were going to be going virtual, people obviously came back and changed their answers and said, yeah, after giving it some more thought, we can go virtual. So rather than making the decision on behalf of the hiring manager who may not want to be managing virtually, we put the onus on them to kind of opt into it, knowing that most people would. But it doesn't stop there, right? Like just because they want to do it doesn't mean they're capable of doing it. And so it was very important for us to then ensure that we were preparing our hiring managers in the right way so that they could provide a good experience, a meaningful experience for our interns. So we ran a couple of management training sessions combined around how to manage early career professionals, but also best practices in managing in a virtual environment, and provided some pretty explicit guidelines for things that they should be doing, especially during the critical kind of pre-boarding and onboarding stages, so that interns come in prepared, going to make the most out of their 10 to 12 week experience and have a good first impression, right? And so those included things like you need to be setting up a pre-boarding call with your intern before they start, and like here are the questions you should be asking. Emphasize and be compassionate about the change in their internship experience. Recognize the fact that it's different from the one that they signed up for. In the background, you need to create a Gantt chart for their project for the course of the summer. So if they're here for 12 weeks, what's their deliverable at the end of each week so that you can hold them accountable and follow up on them? Oh, they're also going to to be presenting to the whole company virtually at the end of the year. And your name's going to be on that presentation as their manager. So you want to make sure that that presentation represents you and your business unit the right way. So I think probably the opposite approach of Mershali, where we put a lot of it on the hiring managers, but gave them everything they needed to be successful. And then as a university relations team, we try to take some of the administrative burden off of the hiring managers, right? So things like getting them their laptops, getting them set up with all of the login credentials, a lot of the pre-boarding communication, things like that that would typically fall on a hiring manager. We took that on our team so that the managers could focus on preparing for their intern to join and have a really good experience.
Before we keep going, I just want to turn it over to Steve Koff. I want to make sure we acknowledge kind of where we are and the conversation we're having.
Thanks a lot, Seth. This has been terrific so far. Hi, everyone watching. I'd just like to remind anyone joining our webinar in midstream that we're from day one. We're exploring the topic of reinventing traditional internships for the virtual world. Our sponsors are NAF and PCAP. As a reminder, you can submit your questions at any time, and we'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A. Many of you are doing it already. Now back to you, Seth.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And as we come back, I want to actually turn back to you, Tom, and then bring this to the full group to just hear about, in maybe short form from each of you, what types of projects might be best for a virtual internship. So if you want to give maybe an example or what you see as key elements, and we'll make this kind of power round style, maybe like, the 1-minute answers, so that I am seeing our chat box fill up here with questions, and I want to get those to you as well. Tom, let's start with you.
Yeah, it's a great question and difficult question, because there were some projects that we had slated for our interns this summer that could not go virtual. You cannot, do a laboratory experiment working from home, right? And that's part of why we really relied on our hiring managers to tell us, can your project go virtual? Can it not go virtual? The only cancellations we saw were ones that were lab-based roles where there was just not a project for that person to do. But everybody else felt confident moving their intern to a virtual experience. And so that includes things like, human resources projects, IT-related projects, a lot of analytical projects. We've been pretty good at shifting as an organization to working in a virtual environment. And so we felt confident that any project that didn't require somebody to be on site working with, a lab coat, goggles, and a beaker, I'm clearly not a scientist, could be done and could be done effectively.
Others, how did you create your project? Scott, let's hear from the Zillow perspective.
Sure. For us, it wasn't as much about the projects itself. The 99% of our projects could be done virtually, but for us, it was thinking more about the support that the intern would need during that time. Mm-hmm. So, Tom had mentioned, management training sessions for, additional training for the intern managers, which we conducted. But one of the things, or a couple of things that we found really important in the projects is we need more frequent check-ins than we typically would in the past, almost daily in most cases, to make sure that the interns are able to get the feedback that they need quickly, and they're able to, be effective on the project that they're working at. The groups of the students that we would assign to project, we actually downsized a little bit to smaller groups. When you get, 10 people on a Zoom call, it becomes a little bit more challenging for them to be able to speak up, get some face time. So shortened, consolidated the size of groups that would be working on projects almost to a one-on-one basis. That way they are able to get the support. And then we also added a mentor into the scenario, where we took a hybrid approach of management. So the recruiter has a management function of the intern, the person leading that project, the intern manager has it, but then we also added another mentor into the mix to provide an additional level of support that the interns would get. So the projects we were able to maintain, but we just wanted to make sure that they got more support than they would have in maybe a face-to-face environment.
Rochelle, you specifically mentioned one example project. Can you tell us a little bit more about the thinking behind the projects that you've organized for the interns?
Yeah, so in kind of developing the projects, we are collaborating with each business manager. With that being said, look, we're looking for the project to really reflect real-time business needs and challenges. I think every business right now has a business need or challenge, whether that be like how to deal with COVID-19. I think for us, technology is, how do we make sure everyone has the technology they need to collaborate without making sure that we don't have any cybersecurity attacks. So, that's a simple project that an intern can research and work on. Our legal team has a series of projects. Actually, I was on the phone with our chief counsel earlier this morning, and he had initially opted out of the program, and now he wants to opt in, requesting 2 interns. So, I think for us, it's looking at the real-time challenges. And again, with the projects, we really wanted to make it really meaty projects because the work that we do here at Fox is so real-time, right? A lot of our interns are able to really see, if they work on a ticker banner for one of our news channels, they're able to see that immediately. So, the projects that we're working on, thankfully, we're not in a lab. We're able to really kind of see those projects real time and really kind of focus on what are some of the real time business challenges we have and how can we kind of overcome that with this kind of new normal that we're experiencing.
Amanda and Brooke, you are also dealing sometimes with high school interns. And, I'm really curious to kind of think about this question in that context, as well as your other college level interns. So Amanda, can you start us out on that? What does it look like in, a high school intern context?
Yeah, so pre and post COVID, what we do is a project of value. And it's actually a theoretical project. It's not a project that our firm directly benefits from, but it's more about the perspective that the interns are bringing to the firm rather than them working on specifically problems that our clients are facing. So the big theme is the sustainable development goals. And if you're not familiar with them, I challenge everyone to go out and dig into them a bit. And so this summer in particular, the interns are being challenged around SDG 11. And specifically to come up with a marketable solution that will make their city in CAP, so if they're from Dallas, DC, St. Louis, more inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And there are deliverables in the project each week. So one week they'll learn about budgeting and how to build a budget and what are the ins and outs of their solution. One week they're learning about how to create a marketing plan and engage on the internet and through social media. And they actually do a final presentation at the end for executives from all companies involved. And I think we get just as much from them as they get from the project. And they use a design thinking approach, as I referred to earlier. So that was the same before as they do now.
Yeah.
Brooke, yeah.
I would just echo that. I mean, obviously, Amanda and I work together on building some of those programs. Really focusing on project of value, either to a community or to the organization. It's really tied to intern satisfaction. So that's a really important, component of that. And I think, Scott, to your point, like Net Promoter Score, like they go back and they talk about their experience with their families and with others. And it's a really important part of what we look at. And as Amanda alluded to before, it's really collaborative in nature. We look at interdepartmental opportunities for people employees within the organization to work cross-functionally with each other as mentors for the intern groups. Also providing content knowledge to those interns so they can do their project effectively and efficiently across the board. And also from a socialization perspective, as we are in this virtual capacity, high school students are particularly vulnerable in terms of that kind of nuanced work environment. And so being really intentional about providing socialization opportunities, even at the college level, if you have like ERGs that you're using across the board, how are they going virtual? How can you connect your interns to people, not just with their supervisor or just with their mentor, but others within the organization? Because we know that happens naturally in an in-person environment. And in a virtual environment, you're not going to run into people in the hall who's wearing a cool Star Wars shirt or whatever, to connect the dots there. So how do we become more intentional? And those are all parts of the design and what we're thinking through when we're scheduling this.
Well, so you all are engaging the audience so well that we have received over 25 questions already. And so I just want to start digging into these. We hopefully will get through a lot of them. And quite a few of them are about team building and social events in this virtual context, which is, I think, a question that people are asking at all levels of the organization, including interns. And so we've already heard a bit about this, the master classes, the happy hours, but just to take it on directly, what is the kind of strategy that you have, so to speak? Like, what is your goal in terms of team building and community? And then tell us, how you're executing it in this virtual environment. Yeah, get us started, Tom.
Yeah, happy to start. So I think we've taken a couple of different approaches to it. I would say that there is a structured approach to kind of team building and networking, where it's like forced fun, right? And then there is the unstructured approach where we want to be giving individuals the opportunity to network themselves, as best they can. And so with the unstructured component, I mean, there's still a little bit of structure, right? We developed an intern-wide Microsoft Teams group that all of the interns have joined and have encouraged them all to leverage as a way to crowdsource questions to issues that they may be having, sharing their experiences. There's one channel that's like general, that's Biogen related, and another channel that's fun for people to share like pictures of their new puppy. And we've seen a ton of engagement there right out of the gate. So a way for people to reach out, asking about, where are you working? What school are you coming from? And then we've also set them up for weekly recurring small group internship meetings every Thursday afternoon for an hour. The same group of, I think it's 7 interns per group, they're going to be coming back week over week. In the first week, I tried to join as many of them as possible for just 5 minutes, like popping in and saying, hey, how are things going? But moving forward, it's just a set aside time for them to come together to kind of share their experiences and kind of build that network that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. On the fun event side, we've got a couple of different things. I think, as I mentioned, we're leveraging the Steam platform to play some kind of collaborative video games. We've got a really cool one that's called Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, where the objective is to defuse a bomb, but only one person can see it, and everybody else on the team has access to like the manual to defuse it. So it's a way for them to work together to try to solve a problem instead of like being competitive against one another. And that's been really popular. I tested it with the HR team and they loved it. And then we've got some bigger kind of games that we'll play. We've got a virtual escape room that we're going to run. For our MBAs, we typically scale up on our programming. That's just who the MBAs are, and so I think they're doing things like a virtual cooking class was an idea that we had for them. They've got like a weekly beer hour. So we've gotten creative where we can, and again, it's a mix of structured fun where like we are providing it, and then unstructured fun, giving them the opportunity to kind of leverage their connections on their own.
Awesome examples.
Yeah,
Go for it.
So my whole thought was how do we bring the physical to virtual? And so we started to think of different things that we could send to the interns to create that environment. And just to give you I'll give you 2 examples of something that we did. So one was Zillow as an organization. We provided all of our employees a couple $100s to purchase work from home equipment, which we also did for our interns. So they're able to order things. We also shipped them as a welcome gift plant. As well as some other things along the way. So we've started to get pictures of interns of what their setup is at home with their plants and their backdrops and things like that. So again, it's trying to take a physical activity and transcend it to virtual. We've also done things like Tom had mentioned. So with our MBAs, we're doing a cocktail making class where we actually mailed them different kinds of ingredients that they would use, syrups and so forth, to try to bring a little bit of a physical presence into the virtual environment. So we still have more things planned for the rest of the year, but trying to recreate that and I think with shipping, you do have some extra costs, and obviously, timing of delays of equipment and all kinds of things right now that are going on in the world, but trying to mitigate that as much as we can. But it gives the interns a little bit of a sense of belonging because they all have the same items in front of them, and they're all kind of in it together, even though they are dispersed, and I think we're in 37 different states or something like that for the course of the summer.
Yeah. Can I add something to that too, Seth? Because I think the part of trying to not force the collaboration and all that is really important to make it organic. So on our side, I think similar to Tom, we've created our Slack channel. And one thing that's actually worked really well for us, our internship experience starts July 6th. We started a private LinkedIn group. And we have made our interns, we challenge our interns to make it fun, and we created a hashtag. We call the interns Fox Core Interns to, give it a little fun spin. And they've begun communicating within that LinkedIn group. Clearly our Slack channel, when they get onboarded fully, they'll have access to that Slack channel. But, I think it's important to make these kind of channels where our interns can get together and connect outside of the campus managers and the recruitment team.
So another question that's come up across the chat box is, how do you think about really building an effective internship program generally? How do you ensure diversity and inclusion and that you are truly building a pipeline that looks like our country? How do you compensate interns? Amanda and Brooke, maybe we can start with you because, Brooke, you're doing this at a national scale across many companies. Amanda, this is part of your social responsibility strategy as a firm. And then, Rochelle, we'd love to come to you after that. So, Brooke, let's get started with you if you're up for it.
Sure. So, given our, national network, really where we're focused is in high need communities. And so we look at our kind of demographics across the board and really feel like the talent pipeline that we have in our high schools right now is a talent pipeline that our companies need across the board to be successful going forward. And so we really pay attention to equity and access, and paid is part of that conversation. Students who are coming from homes that, their parents didn't graduate high school. That is kind of the role model status. So how do we share and show our high school students that their work is of value? And part of that is the payment conversation. And so with all of our partner companies, we make sure that the high school experience is a paid opportunity. And I know particularly at KPMG, you guys are looking really into the diversity and inclusion pipeline. And so Amanda, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, the Future Ready Lab in its design, and I think in all the ways that the corporate partners look at the design is, if I am a Black or Latinx or queer child in this country and I have not seen my story reflected in your profession, I may never see myself having a place there. And so what we're really trying to do is close those gaps, to provide equal access to our profession so that we can grow an increasingly inclusive and diverse future workforce. And this has been how the program has been designed from day one. And it's obviously very special to continue this work in the middle of the Black Lives Matter movement. That, everything from the way we design the program, making sure that, we talked about accountability. There has to be flexibility in our program. We have students who in a normal summer, let alone COVID, they have parents who are essential workers and they may have increased responsibilities in the home. And it is absolutely acceptable on work time if they have a sibling or something that has, a need. And so it's really having more of a compassionate program from that consideration. And then we just have these conversations with interns, and it's not just the summer. We've been doing it really since the design of the program. Particularly a story that comes to mind is in our second year of the program, but it was our first year in St. Louis, in a couple of school districts right outside of Ferguson, Missouri. We very quickly recognized that our office, KPMG St. Louis, that the interns may not be seeing their story in the volunteers that we were bringing to the program. And so we, alongside MasterCard Worldwide Technology, we sat down and said, we recognize this. Here's where we're at. Here's where we have failed. Here is where we are headed. But we want to hear from you. What is it like to be you? What is it like to be you at our company? And so that's been integral to the design of the program. I lean really heavily on my colleagues who are inclusion and diversity professionals to help engage our volunteers and engaging the interns in these conversations. And we'll absolutely make sure that those conversations are contemporary this summer.
Rochelle?
Yeah, for us, look, we have several partnerships. So with various diversity organizations, so one of those being T. Howard, Emma Bowen Foundation, we have partnerships with those who really target students that are people of color. In addition to that, we also have partnerships with historical Black colleges and universities, Howard being one of them, where again, we try to make sure that we are injecting diversity into our intern talent pipeline. All our opportunities are paid opportunities here at Fox. We only hire at the college level, so you can start with us as a sophomore. And what's great about that is because we do get a lot of returning interns, because we have a fall, spring, and summer session. We do get a lot of returning interns as well. And then we work really, really closely with our head of diversity and inclusion as well, to ensure that we are continuously infusing diversity and making it part of really the fabric of our intern program. So those are some of the things that we're doing to ensure that our intern program looks like the rest of the world. Clearly, there are pockets where we can do better. I'm sure everyone is not oblivious to this, but for the summer, we typically get a lot of referrals, and those referrals don't happen to look very diverse. So that's something that we're trying to work on, to see how we can change that and how we can make that a more diverse experience, a more diverse referral process. But those are some things that we're working on from the diversity standpoint for our internship program.
Scott, Tom, anything to add before we go for it, Tom? Scott?
I'll add one quick thing. I think with diversity, the thing that I've learned over the years is that you can't expect your process or your timeline to be the same as everybody else's, right? So, people are graduating at different times of the year. People are having opportunities at different times of the year. You meet people at different times of the year. The traditional university recruiting format is, you interview in the fall, you make all your offers then, and the rest of the year you're working on intern programming and other stuff. But to be able to kind of shift that thought and be open to having opportunities available for people in different formats at different times of the year that are going to be more advantageous for what their schedule is, makes a huge difference in the way. So right now we're looking at doing more types of non-internship type of experiences, like co-ops, for example, where you can partner with a university almost in a classroom setting, and be able to work with students in different ways that maybe are a little bit more advantageous to what that student's schedule is. So I think just being kind of open-minded and looking at alternative pathways and alternative timings throughout the year makes a big difference when you're looking at diversity recruiting.
Yeah. One thing that, and I'll just piggyback off that one, is one thing that we've done, because our campus team is super lean, very lean. And one thing that we've done is essentially we've have what we're calling college ambassadors, where they go back onto their colleges and they recruit for us. So the interns that have worked for us, that have been part of our internship program, go back to their colleges that we essentially can't get to or can't have like a really big presence on. And then we have what we're calling campus ambassadors that sit out on these local colleges. We pay them a stipend to throw on like watch parties or anything of that sort to help recruit for our firm. And then we also partner up with these various schools as well to hold virtual information sessions as well for students. So that's another kind of avenue we have as well.
Yeah, and if I could just add one quick point, I think Marshall had made a great point about campus recruiting being an incredible place to increase diversity in your employee population. There's just a ton of different options out there for you to go and increase diversity in your organization. Something that we considered this year is, how does moving to a virtual environment impact people, say, coming from like a lower socioeconomic status, for example, right? To a certain extent, if everybody's in the office, they're on even footing to a certain extent. But if you can imagine somebody's working at home virtually for 10 or 12 weeks at a 2-bedroom apartment with 6 people, it's going to be very difficult for them, to be able to be as efficient or as effective as they would be if they had the escape of the office where they could set that aside and focus on their work. And so it was part of what we had to explain to our managers, is that not every intern is created equal, and you're going to have to ensure that you are supporting them in the right way based on their situation, or setting the appropriate expectations. So yes, we're saying that it's really important to turn your camera on, but some people might not be comfortable turning their camera on every single day because there could be a lot of things going on in the background, and they don't want to be perception as being a distraction, right? So it's something to consider too, is how are you supporting your diverse population when you are moving to a virtual environment, because it's different than the one you've been preparing for with everybody coming in the office. So there's been a pivot that's had to happen there as well.
And that actually picks up on a number of other questions in Q&A, and the kind of thesis, I think, across them is that there are ways that we need to accommodate for differences that are part of everyone being at home in this moment than in the workplace. And so you spoke powerfully, Tom, to one of those. But in the chat box, there's talk about, do some of you have international interns? Do you have interns across many different time zones? And how do you kind of manage as interns work together on projects, as you were talking about, Tom, as interns may be part of teams with others on your core staff, and their expectations around turning on your video, or around timing, or around background noise. How have you thought about, obviously it's a mix of setting expectations and being flexible and accommodating, but how have you looked at that balance and thought about how to really help support teams amidst what is a very dynamic situation when you have people in very different environments?
Yeah, I can start with that one. We have a large percentage of our interns are international students, particularly PhD level. And we offer corporate housing to the majority of our interns, as we're predominantly located in Seattle and San Francisco, which it's hard to find short-term housing. So one of the things when we were thinking about our internship is, wow, we've already committed to corporate housing for these students that may not have anywhere else to live for the summer. So when we had to claw back that corporate housing, they might not even have the ability to get to any of these cities, we offered a housing stipend to offset that. So wherever that they happened to be for the summer, they were getting some additional financial support for that. It was really, really important to us. And that was, one of the big things that when we first talked about, whether we're going to do the internship or not, is like, we want to maintain our commitment to our staff, our employees. So we haven't laid anybody off. We haven't rescinded any full-time offers. We didn't rescind any of our internship offers. But we wanted to make sure that, we were thinking about, the intern as a whole and all of the different things that we were going to be offering to them, especially when that corporate housing situation came up. We did have a couple of interns that went back to their home country and were not able to make it back to the U.S. for their internship this summer, unfortunately. So right now we're considering, offering them something else in return, whether that be a fall internship opportunity or whatnot. That's still kind of in development. But that's something that we took really a really good look at and how that was going to impact. And also, some students, and, to kind of echo what Brooke had said as well, is, everybody's home situation is a little bit different. So while they may have, they're living in the dorms for the summer, or they had hoped to live in the dorms for the summer, some schools did not allow that as an opportunity, and they actually closed down. So again, that housing stipend impacted domestic students as well in a lot of cases, where they might not have a really stable home environment that is conducive to a good workspace.
Other comments on this one?
I would just say, I think there's flexibility has to be key throughout all of this, even grace, even for all of us who are now, working in a remote environment. We have childcare responsibilities, we have other things. There's a lot of open dialogue around needs and supports. Everything from, students don't have laptops at home that they're doing an internship, and so we need to make sure that they have equipment, headsets. We're creating backgrounds like the one you have, Seth, background, because not everyone, wants to show their home life. And so, being really flexible, really intentional around that this is the new reality is incredibly important in this moment. And I think too, Scott, to your point about, corporate housing and things like that, we saw a lot of companies who don't do those things. And this is an opportunity across the board for all of us to really think about where we're recruiting from, whether that's the high school level, the college level, or whatever. The virtual environment does kind of, level the playing field a little bit in terms of being able to recruit from a lot of different areas that you may not have had access to before. And so that's a plus as we're looking at positives for virtual experiences.
Well, so can I pick up on that? I want to do a plus delta with this group because this is a sea change. We've talked for an hour plus now about all the, structural issues that you needed to adjust for. But at the same time, there are benefits. And, we're going to go beyond COVID. And I think there's going to be a question of what can go virtual. And so I'm curious for each of you to just give your kind of assessment of what's the, con side? Like, where do you think that even though you've done awesome work to build virtual internships, they're still going to fall short either on the business productivity or on the student, development side? And then where could this actually be better? How, could you see, in the future, maybe this piece of what we do, we're going to keep virtual, or we're going to keep doing these master classes via webinar because it turns out, it's easier for everyone and allows us to come together and we don't need to be in one room. So I'm just curious for each of you to share that because it might give us insight into the post-pandemic internships that hopefully are a year away for next summer or before.
I can kick us off. If I think back 5 years ago or more, the concept of an intern working from home even one day would have been met with fierce resistance. And I think this is actually going to change a lot of people's mindset about that. There's some things like Tom had mentioned, you can't really recreate a lab environment in your living room. Or for Amanda, like you can't be at a client site from home in some cases, right? So there's some things that you just can't completely replace, but I think it may create more of a hybrid scenario where interns may be able to work from home 1 or 2 days a week, whereas in the past that really wouldn't have gotten very far along in the process. But I think that the interns are going to miss out a little bit on networking opportunities being virtual. They're going to miss out a little bit on soft skill development. They're going to miss that kind of water cooler talk and the random, going to lunch with somebody, that they're just going to miss. So I think there are going to be a little bit of drawbacks. It's also going to force them to become more resourceful. Like, how do they, networking is they have to take ownership of that themselves, right? So how are they going to become more resourceful? And I think a lot of them will. The other thing I think is the expectation of the amount of work that they're going to get done is going to shift a little bit too. I think they're actually going to be more productive this summer than they had in previous summers because they're not going to have the distractions that they have in the office and just kind of the idle chatter or, being pulled into a random conversation with somebody. I think they get benefit from all of those things, but the workload that they get, I envision that they're actually going to get through it faster than what we anticipated or what they had done previously. So the projects that we're designing for them, I think they're actually going to accomplish them at a faster pace than what they had before. So we're going to have to maybe think about additional projects maybe towards the end of the internship. Because they are going to be more resourceful and they're going to have more dedicated time. I know me personally, I am way more productive now than I have been working from home, and it just seems like I'm able to get more done. So I think that's going to translate to the interns just as much.
Thanks, Scott. Other thoughts on this? Do you see higher productivity? Do you see some of these benefits that Scott's describing? Go for it, Amanda, and then we'll come to Tom and then Michelle.
Sure. So, I think what's lost in the Future Ready Lab is just stating the obvious. It is that sort of in-person human hand-holding component, right? Like there's a really important mentorship component to the Future Ready Lab, and we will do that virtually, and they will meet with their mentors. but it's just not the same. It's not the same to have a meaningful conversation about race, for example, and to try to do that on a computer. We're still going to do it. It's just that we know that the way the human brain and heart works, it's just not going to be the same as being in the room with the young people. But that being said, I do think the main thing that we've been trying to put our heads together with NAF is on scaling these solutions and having components of them be centralized, be virtual, be recorded, be excellent in quality, and we have, you know, kind of control over the quality of delivery. That will, in the longer term, help us reach more NAF students with more meaningful content and experiences. So it hurts to be apart this summer, but I know that this is launching us into a lot of good. So.
Tom?
Yeah. I think in a lot of ways it's kind of wait and see, right? So this is still, even though we've been doing it for 3 months, really new for a lot of us. And I think the future of virtual internships in part depends on how well this summer goes, based on feedback we hear from hiring managers, feedback we hear from our interns, as well as the direction that, you know, Biogen and other companies decide to go in. If they, you know, decide that we don't need to be spending all this money on a massive office, we can scale back drastically and have half of our workforce working from home. That may necessitate more internships virtually. I do think that there are, you know, benefits to it. I think one of the big benefits for this summer, right, is that, you know, who amongst us doesn't work for an organization where the priorities shift on a dime, right? And there's something new that we've got to work on. And this is, you know, a very early example for these interns to have to, you know, develop some of that resilience and adaptability with moving from what they expected to be an on-ground internship to a virtual internship. And that's an experience that's a soft skill that I think is going to benefit them longer term. On the, you know, on the downside, I think that one of the big things outside of kind of the more natural networking that would happen in the office, soft skill development is probably going to be a little bit more difficult. Things that an early career professional might pick up just from being in the office and observing those around them, how a meeting gets run, how people are communicating with each other. It's going to be a little bit more difficult when you can't just sit back and be, you know, a passive observer, because when you're on, you're an active participant now. So that's something we'll have to think about.
Rochelle?
Yeah, look, I echo everyone's thoughts here. I think, you know, one of the cons of the virtual internship experience is the social experience. I think for all of us, there is something to be said about having that social experience of going into the workplace, you know, going to school. There's a social experience and things that are picked up on that end. So I think, you know, that is definitely a con. But for me, I think one of the big opportunities that I see with everything being virtual as it relates to an internship program is really the diversity. I think we're going to be able to really impact diversity at a really higher rate than what has, at least for our company, what's traditionally been done. I think now we'll be able to kind of be more ingrained in channels that we normally would not have been or thought about. If we're saying that folks can work from home without having to come in the office, perhaps we can take an inner city kid that probably doesn't have the means to come into the city every day or whatever the case is to work from home virtually. So for me, I'm really excited about that uptick where diversity, I think, will change positively based on working from home.
Any others on the plus delta? Brooke, go for it. Our last word.
I would echo everyone, what everyone has said thus far, and would also just say that I'm looking forward to what the interns are going to bring to our table to help us adjust to this virtual environment as well. I remember the first time I got hired at a job and I was so scared to talk about I didn't have work experience, and the hiring manager looked at me and said, well, I don't have to like correct any bad practices, right? Like you're starting fresh. This is their first kind of career professional experience, and what they bring to the table is going to teach us all something, and it's really going to kind of start us in this virtual world of work.
Well, so another question that goes throughout the question and answer box is around the training approach. All of you referred to a kind of training management program. Obviously, it's going to look very different at a Zillow than at a lab than at a major media company. But maybe each of you could just share with us some of the key elements that are part of your training and development for interns. And I know they're virtual now, but maybe we'll hear about them net large, and then you can talk about any adjustments specifically for the virtual moment. And this is popcorn style. Whoever wants to answer that first. Go for it, Amanda.
Well, in the Future Ready Lab model, what we have is a project of value that's given to the interns on the first or second day, and then woven throughout the 4 or 5 week experience, depending on sort of what the various cities and school districts have capacity for, are workshops on various soft and technical skills. So they might receive content that feels like a facilitated training, and then that's very quickly workshopped into the project deliverables. So we really sit down with NAF and our other corporate collaborators, Verizon, Capital One, and say, okay, what are the soft skills that we're really hoping that the interns will advance over the experience? And what are the technical skills that we just want them to at least be exposed to? Not that they would necessarily be proficient, for example, after a 60-minute Microsoft Excel workshop. And so those are really mapped out in that is like the primary content really of the internship.
I would also just say, from the management perspective of just being really intentional, having kind of that centralized, I think most of us in this space are operating this way, is that you kind of have like the central control unit that's thinking through, how do you onboard managers for this? What is the process going to look like? So then the hiring managers and the supervisors have less of a lift to help navigate some of that, but it does come from that centralized point of communication. I would also say for our high school interns, and I think would be valuable for college interns as well, is thinking through the schedule. They're not going to get the experience in terms of networking and other things that we've talked about on this call, by being in a hallway or by going to lunch with someone. So how do we set them up kind of time zones without like trying to like micromanage? But how do we be really intentional about that schedule from an organizational perspective, that all interns get certain components that we want them to experience, and putting calendar holds and just, being organized.
Yeah, go for it, Scott.
Yeah, add a little bit to that. So we take it's an 80-20 approach. So about 80% of the time during the internship, the intern is embedded into a team working on a project, but it's a real life project. So one of our software engineers, for example, like the code base that they're working on is the code base that we use. So the projects that they're working on will be implemented into, hopefully, will be implemented into our actual, real life websites, mobile apps, et cetera. So 80% of it is really on the job. And then the other 20% is programming that we put together that's across all interns. So an MBA intern, a software engineer, an intern in HR, for example, would get exposed to the same type of trainings through that. And those range across a bunch of different facets. So it could be soft skill development, for the undergraduates, maybe something on how to receive feedback and how to act on feedback. Whereas a software engineer will get stuff that's a little bit more technical based, so there is some customized depending on the function, but again, that kind of 80-20 model where we really want them to see what it's like on the job. And something we haven't talked about too much on this call is, an internship is an opportunity for a student to create their own career awareness and help them figure out what is really, really of interest to them and what type of career they want to pursue. So we try to give them opportunities also to give them that career awareness experience, to know if they want to, again, I'll go to software engineers, but give them a little bit of a taste of front end work versus back end work versus full stack. So they can really try to figure out if they want to become a mobile app developer or something more of a system admin or whatnot. And that career awareness piece, I think, is a huge part of the internship experience that we also try to recreate throughout the summer.
Well, so we have spent the last hour and 20 minutes talking about the importance of internships, how you have really recreated your workplace to have interns and your company be successful. And so I want to have a final question, which is a story-based question, so that we all in this hard moment go out on a high note. And it's, you know, where have you seen an internship truly change a life, change your company? Tell us a story. And so we're going to go to each of you, and I'm eager to just hear from you where internships have truly mattered in an individual case, that can just give us all a sense, anecdotally, as well as obviously all of the strategy questions we've asked so far, of why this is such an important focus. And again, whoever pops first on this one, it's yours.
I'll go first.
Great.
So a couple of years ago, we were facilitating a program. It was one of our first Future A labs in Dallas. And we had an intern who was a teen father. And he was interested in engineering, and he came to, I believe it was Capital One, in an internship, and you know, kind of using his skill sets that he brought from an engineering background into this particular project, and just getting to know him personally, and the way that internship helped shape his life. Like all of the work that we poured into building this program and making sure, you know, that the project was right and all of the components felt right, to see him be successful in the internship itself, which led to another internship, which led to a scholarship, which led to a job. Like those types of stories where you see all the work that you're doing is really changing lives is so important. And for those of you in the audience who haven't had an intern before in the past, get one. It's an amazing experience. You'll learn a lot about yourself and a lot about others.
Thank you, Brooke. Great story. And we're going to turn over to the others now, who hopefully aren't too intimidated by that story, to share one of their own.
I'm happy to jump in. Actually, this is very time appropriate, because yesterday, one of our directors at Fox Corporation posted that he's been here for 20 years. And interestingly enough, he moved from Boston to LA to take on an internship opportunity back in January 2000. And he began his Fox internship with us. And then he is still here 20 years later as one of our directors. And, you know, what he said in his post is that he never imagined that, you know, his internship would kind of turn into a lifelong career that really has kind of taken him across the globe and given him opportunities to work on really some amazing projects with amazing colleagues. So, you know, clearly internships are super important because they become a career for folks. So that's a story that's actually 2 days ago, he posted that on his LinkedIn because he was recognized for being with our company for 20 years, and he started as an intern. So,
Scott, Amanda, I saw both of you unmute before. Who's ready?
Yeah, I can share one. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the Inroads program. It's an intern, right? So my first Inroads intern that I had at the American Institute of CPAs was really designed to create a career awareness within the accounting profession. And I had an intern there for a year, and then I moved over to KPMG, and I kind of brought her with me. So she interned at KPMG then, and ended up pursuing a career in audit, and had a really good couple of years in audit. And then she came to me one day and said, "Scott, I'm really interested in getting into recruiting. I love what you do. I'd love to learn a little bit more about it." Fast forward, 5 years from there, she's now an adjunct professor at North Carolina A&T. She's also a career coach and has started her own business. But that first internship experience really gave her the opportunity to learn about what a career in accounting could do and all the different ways you could branch off from it. And she ended up taking, in my mind, she's on kind of her second career already. But that first internship really gave her a good foundation of what the possibilities were and what she as an individual could do. And I think it really was eye-opening to her to say, I think it gave her a lot of confidence of like, I can be as successful as I want to be. And I think internships really, and it's just to echo NAF, like I think it's a great program. And again, I think that really does a lot for just the psyche of the individual that's going through it, of seeing themselves, well, I am in a corporate environment. I had a great summer. I can be this kind of person if I want to be. So.
Amanda?
Yeah, part of the joy of working on this program is the network of mentors that I've developed over the years that have formerly been mentors or continue to be mentors in a really coveted volunteer role. And so, just this week, I've heard stories from mentors. Last year, our New York lab, they actually got to go on campus at Baruch College and do a tour. And so I had a mentor bragging yesterday that he stayed in touch with his intern and that intern's enrolled at Baruch this fall.
Wow.
And another mentor yesterday bragging on the app that his intern had developed. So the stories are really endless.
And Tom, our last word.
Yeah, I kind of have a weird one. So as I mentioned, we did have to cancel like a handful, I think it was about a dozen internships this year, but we didn't want to leave those interns kind of high and dry, right? Because it's a pretty crummy experience. And so what we did was we offered all of our interns a canceled stipend, in recognition of the fact that they were canceled and, maybe stagnant for the summer. And we also invited them to join us for a summer educational program where essentially they're going to come to our weekly lunch and learns. And while, people were disappointed, there was one intern who was just incredibly gracious, who mentioned that they were really relying on this money, this summer to help to fund their college. And, we're so excited they'd still be able to get an experience with Biogen this summer, something they'd be able to put on their resume, even if it's not the, traditional internship experience. And so to me, it was just an indication that, this is so important. And even if we're not getting anything, out of this internship, right? He's not going to be working on a project for us. It's just the right thing to do in making the, the best of a bad situation. And it really just, continue to open my eyes on like how important this is to those students and how we can really make a difference.
Well, cannot say thank you enough to the five of you for phenomenal insight. I really feel like you've given us so much in terms of the value of internships, the structure, and a really high bar for what to do in this virtual moment. I'll just close myself by sharing a story. So I lead a center that focuses on how to integrate business strategy and social purpose at Loyola University. And we have student interns as part of the broader center staffing. And one of my favorite stories is this intern that we had 2 years ago who was just incredible in terms of her capabilities. And we were talking about, where she may want to go in her future. My immediate sense was that she was setting the bar too low with her talents. And so we talked about it. She ended up going to work for an executive search firm whose partner is on our leadership council because she saw how incredible this person was in a number of different settings. And now on a not infrequent basis, she will call me up as they're doing searches and things like that. Who do you know in this social impact space? Or who do you know here? And I just see her like totally thriving. And so, to Scott's point earlier, that exposure, that opportunity to see people become who they can be, and they probably know, but it may be hidden within them, is just really incredible. And the benefit that has to society, is endless. So, so with that, let me turn it back over to Steve, and I'll let you close us out here.
Thanks, Seth. Those are really uplifting stories. That was a great way to wrap things up. Thank you to our wonderful speakers, Seth, our moderator. That was a great conversation. Thanks again to our sponsors, NAF and PCAP, and to all of you for participating today. If you'd like to join us for more virtual events, you can head to our website, fromday1.co, and check out more of our upcoming webinars. Thanks, everyone. Be well.
Thanks so much for joining us. This is From Day One. Please join us next week on Thursday, June 11th for the webinar, Nurturing Employee Engagement in Uncertain Times. And the following week, Thursday, June 18th, we'll be filling the information gap in employee health and well-being, a data-driven approach to employee health and well-being. Thanks again for joining today. We hope to see you soon.